be back on the fixed blood sugar webinar. What's going on, everybody? Man, it feels like a month or so since I've been on one of these things. I tell you what, lots of traveling and random things going on in life, but all good. Dr. Saunders, how are you?
Doing great. Doing great. It's a good day.
Fantastic. And Leslie Prinz, star of the show, how are you doing?
I am well. It's a beautiful fall day here in South Dakota. The sun is trying to peek out a little bit, but it's getting pretty cold.
Yeah, West River, they got like dumped on 8 inches of snow or something. It's like, wow, I'm glad we're East River.
I know.
Well, welcome everybody. This is the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar where we talk about this. Wow, I'm blurred. How do I not blur it? Wow, technology, the diabetes solution kit. There it is. I had to put it in front of my shirt. That's when we talk, this is what we're talking about. The diabetes solution kit from Barton Publishing. And it's how to reverse type 2 diabetes without saying that for legal purposes. Speaking of which, Dr. Saunders, could you give us our most favorite part of the episode is when we get
okay. So what you're getting here is information, and you got to think this information is being given out to the whole world. Like anybody in the world can watch this, and it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. So this is for general information purposes. And so you need to take what might apply to you and work with your doctor, healthcare provider, or expert, or your guru, whoever it is that you're working with to find out or decide if it's the right thing for you.
Yes. Yeah, I had a thought. One of our episodes someday, we should talk about the healthcare profession and doctors, but that might get us banned forever. So maybe we don't want to do that. So, well, anyways, so every other week we talk about the basics of type 2 and how to get those blood sugars in line to basically put diabetes in remission, which we like to say. And then the other weeks we have a topic that we focus on, which is a little bit more specialized. Usually has something to do with diabetes. And this week, we're going to be talking about why does my blood sugar not go down? Like, why are all the reasons? We hear that from a lot of people, like, I'm doing all these things, but my blood sugar isn't going down. And so that's what we're going to get into today. So Leslie, anything else we need to do for housekeeping before we turn it over to the good doc?
You know what, if questions come up while we are chatting, feel free to type those in the Q&A. If you're watching on Facebook, post it on the comments. We're going to try to get to as many as we can while we are live. But I think that's it. We're going to let Dr. Saunders do his thing and teach us. And it's the best part. So let's get started with that.
All right.
Okay. So if any of you are on Home Cures That Work, then you will see a lot of this because I'm actually writing an article about this for Home Cures at Work. Why doesn't my blood sugar go down? We have a lot of people that, you know, they're doing the program and they're following the outline exactly, and they're counting their carbs, and they're not eating more than their 20 grams of carbohydrates, and they're still getting high blood sugar. And one of the reasons was that I also had a patient recently, and she's in her 60s and she has type 2 diabetes, and she's been on all these medications. And so we looked at the options of what she could do. And I said, you know what, the best thing you could do is to do a cleanse, a broth cleanse. And so she starts on the broth cleanse and she's doing it, and her blood sugar just stays at 160, 170, 150. And she's having nothing except some broth twice a day. And so her stomach's empty most of the time. She's lost a bunch. She lost 20 pounds, and her blood sugar's still in the 160s, 170s. It just has not come down. And so you can imagine how frustrating that is. I mean, like, she's practically fasting, and her blood sugar hasn't come down. So why is that, and why does that happen? And so in her case, we tested, And we went through a whole bunch of different tests. So let's talk about the different types of things that could happen. And if you're trying really hard and your blood sugar is not coming down, make a note, because some of these might be your issues. You might have something like this. One of the biggest is insulin. Insulin is the hormone that allows the blood sugar to get into the cell. So you have this cell, but sugar can't get into the cell until insulin opens up a port so that the sugar can get in. Without insulin, you can't get sugar into the cells at all. And the more insulin you have, the more ports are open, the more sugar gets into the cells. So if those are all blocked and closed, then even if you have insulin, you can't get sugar in the cells. But think about this too. What if you don't have enough insulin? Then the sugar can't get into the cells, and the sugar will go up in the blood. So the blood sugar is going to be elevated. So insulin is probably the biggest thing. And when you have type 2 diabetes, you are resistant to insulin. And some people, they can measure insulin levels and say, oh, you have a mild insulin resistance and these severe insulin resistance. I've had people that are over 100. A normal insulin level is about 5 on a fasting specimen. Over 10 is a little high. Over 20 is definitely high. 30 is way up there. And I've had people over 100. So they're super insulin resistant. So their insulin's 100 and their blood sugar's, high too, 200s and 300s. So they have a lot of insulin resistance. So even if they stop eating, their blood sugar is not going to come down very quickly, because they're so resistant to insulin that you're not going to get sugar into the cells. So it's going to stay high on the outside, because the sugar's not going to be allowed to get into the cells because the cells are resisting it. So that's one big reason. And in that kind of a case, if you have high insulin resistance, then that's more of a patience thing. You just have to wait, because over time, as you're using up that energy, you can push it along faster by exercising. By the way, if you're exercising, that opens up the ports and allows sugar to get into the cells all by itself. The exercise can, but it also allows the cells to be more sensitive to the insulin. So exercise is a great thing to do if you're really insulin resistant. The other thing to do is you may find that eating fat makes you more resistant to insulin, so that people who are on our ketogenic diet, which is the phase 1 in the book, are not getting very much carbohydrates, but they can eat fat. We don't make them count proteins or fats, but fat does cause insulin resistance. So if you're on phase 1 and you have a high fat diet and you're drinking cream and eating bacon and sausage and cheese omelets for breakfast, and doing that kind of thing, then you may want to cut the fat out. And then you say, well, what do I eat? Well, that's pretty simple. We have a whole list of free foods, and eat all the free foods, all the kale and broccoli and spinach and cauliflower and lettuce and salads. All that stuff is free. You can eat as much of that as you want. And so decreasing the fat will often make a big difference in decreasing the insulin resistance, so that your blood sugar can come down on the diet. And the other thing is protein. Protein will actually, a high protein diet makes you more resistant to insulin as well. But that's for a different reason. It's interesting that insulin lets protein into the cells also. So it does the same thing sugar does. And some people are really sensitive to protein, and they will find that if they cut out that excess protein, that they'll have more insulin sensitivity and allow the sugar into the cells, so that their blood sugar can come down. So that's just one thing. That's the insulin, how the insulin affects or insulin resistance affects that, the ability for your blood sugar to come down. So it's not automatic. You're not going to automatically, just because you're on this low carb diet, it doesn't mean that you're just going to automatically shoot down. Some people do great. And a lot of people call to say, wow, it's only been 3 weeks and my hemoglobin A1C has come down to normal. You know, we tell these stories about how these people have done awesome. And you're like sitting there going, man, I'm working really hard at this and it's not working for me. What the heck? So insulin resistance, that's the big one. Okay.
Can we park there just for a little bit while we're on that topic?
Well, okay.
Okay, so real quick, how does somebody know if they are insulin resistant or have high insulin levels?
Okay, you got to measure. You really can't know. You don't know where you are unless it's been measured. So go to your doctor and say, I need an insulin level, and ideally also a C-peptide level. The C-peptide level tells you how the pancreas function is. The insulin level gives you the insulin at that moment, in that instant, but the C-peptide is more of a general idea of the pancreas function. So if your C-peptide is over 3, then that means you're putting out a lot of extra insulin. And if it's under 1, then you're not making very much insulin. And that's kind of an important thing to have. So get a measurement. That would be the best way to handle that.
And we've covered this on previous webinars, but a lot of times you'll go to the doctor and they'll measure your blood sugar, but they don't necessarily measure insulin unless you ask for it.
Correct.
It's like much less common. So you have to ask for that and the C-peptide to get that pancreas function. Okay, very good. And then, so I'm wondering, as you talked about not eating too much fat or too much protein, like, is there any reason why some people have a problem with that while others don't? Like, is it possibly related to minerals, or are you going to get into that in our next section here of why blood sugars aren't coming down?
Well, that's part of it too, and I will be talking about that.
Okay.
We throw that all in under the rubric of genetics. You have this genetics and epigenetics. But there are nutritional things too. And one reason why your blood sugar might not be coming down is you don't have enough chromium. Chromium all by itself is very important for the proper utilization of sugar in the body. And if you don't have chromium, then you don't use sugar very well or very efficiently as an energy source. So if that's the case, then just having a chromium deficiency can prevent your blood sugar from coming down. So that would be a common one. Chromium and vanadium are 2 minerals. Vitamin D is another one. And those are the 3 probably the most common ones. And then if there's inflammation, that will prevent your blood sugar from coming down. If you have general inflammation, things like arthritis and lupus, autoimmune kinds of diseases, or just when you eat a lot of fat, you tend to get more inflammation anyway, and sugar tends to cause more inflammation. So just having the inflammation, there was one study that showed just adding fish oil brought blood sugar down in people that had inflammation. So those are things that you might be deficient in, not have enough of, that would cause your blood sugar to stay high and not be able to come down.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned chromium, vanadium, vitamin D, and I know that you are not one that loves to prescribe supplements over food, but knowing how hard it is to get those things in our food sources, let's talk about that, because we're not going to hide this fact, but you formulated Synachroma, and this is our #1 best-selling blood sugar support formula that you currently can only get on bartonnutrition.com or on our own website. So let's talk about why you created this and where you can get it in food sources, and why the supplement might be important for someone.
Okay, so the reason this particular supplement was made the way it is because I picked out just the things that people are deficient in commonly, that I see all the time, because I test people for their chromium levels, I test people for their vitamin D levels, thousands of people, and it's very common to have chromium vanadium deficiency. In fact, definitely more people are deficient than not, and so to have a source of these supplements that you're not getting from food. And why not? Well, because we don't replace them in the soils. Guess what? There's no plant that needs selenium or chromium or vanadium. These are minerals that we need, but the plants don't need them. So why would a farmer give it to the plant when the plant doesn't even need it to produce the fruit, right? So if it's going to be in the plant, it's because it's in the soil, and the plant takes it up but doesn't use it. It just makes it into like selenomethionine, just binds it to an amino acid so that when we eat it, then we get it. So when you look at foods and say, garlic is high in chromium, and onions are high in chromium, you got to remember that these studies were done in the 1930s when they first started doing food. And the soils were a little different. They weren't so depleted as they are today. So now 100 years later, in not replenishing any soils with these kind of nutrients, they're less and less and less. So if you look for deficiencies, selenium is chromium. These are common deficiencies. Why? Because it's not in the soil. So it's not going to be in the plant, even when it says this is in the plant. So like, for example, if you want selenium and they say, oh, eat Brazil nuts, they have a lot of selenium. Well, why do they have a lot of selenium? Is there something magical about Brazil nuts? They concentrate selenium? No, they can only be grown in certain areas. And it just so happens that there's a lot of selenium in those soils in eastern Brazil where the Brazil nuts are grown. And so if you grow them somewhere else in a soil that doesn't have selenium, there's going to be no selenium in those Brazil nuts because it's only dependent on what's in the soil. So yes, you can eat Brazil nuts as long as you're sure they come from eastern Brazil and not from Asia or other areas of South America. And then you're going to be getting selenium, and that's okay. And that's fine. But since it's not generally in the food, then you know what? This is one of the few times that I recommend a supplement because you know what? There's no better way to get it, and there's no easy way to get it, and there's no food that you can be sure is going to have it.
So lucky for you, our webinar viewers, we're going to give you a coupon code right now that is going to get you 25% off whatever package that you buy at bartonnutrition.com. And the webinar code is webinar25. So just go to bartonnutrition.com, get Synachroma if you don't already have this, or if you need more, and then enter webinar25 and you'll save 25%. So Dr. Saunders mentioned that this has cinnamon bark extract and chromium and vitamin D3. It also has vitamin K2, which is really important to get the vitamin D to absorb or to use calcium properly, get it out of the blood and into the bones and teeth where it's needed. Selenium and vanadium were also the other two that are the deficiencies that you've tested and that are. Could you real quick say, like, are each of those connected to blood sugar or insulin response?
Yes, all of them are.
Okay.
That's why we put it in there. Everything in there, except for the K2, which is just to complement the D3. But everything in there has something to do with the way the body uses blood sugar. Now, the selenium is more of is not a primary. That's not primarily what it does. It's secondarily, but still, you need the glutathione for the mitochondria to function right, which is where the sugar is used. So everything in there is these are common deficiencies, and if you don't have them, you won't use sugar very efficiently.
Okay. And if you're on the Barton email list, we've sent out emails in the past that talk about a warehouse sale that we have where you can get 12 bottles and also get a free bottle of magnesium. And I believe you can use the coupon code on that, which it's already highly discounted, but like that's like a cheat code on a video game or something if you want to save a little extra because you're watching this webinar. So this our appreciation for you guys joining on here. So, okay, back to Dr. Saunders. You mentioned inflammation. You've mentioned insulin. You mentioned deficiencies. Any other reasons why blood sugar levels aren't coming down for people?
Yes, stress. Do not discount stress. Stress is huge. It is, it's the 90%. It's the elephant in the middle of the room. You know, in the Bible where it says they strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. And I'll tell you right now, the selenium is a gnat and the camel is stress. Don't try to strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Deal with stress, because a lot of people, their blood sugar doesn't come down because of stress. I've told the story of Julie, who was overweight, had diabetes, and her blood sugar would not come down with 4 drugs and insulin injecting 200 units a day, which is 10 times what the average pancreas normally makes. And her blood sugar was always over 200 and mostly over 300 in spite of everything we did, until her daughter moved out of the house and they became good friends, that her blood sugar went down to normal, off of all medications. She had to get off all her medications. It was the stress of her daughter. She and her daughter were fighting all the time when they were living together. And as soon as her daughter got an apartment outside the house, all of a sudden they're best friends. Hi, Mom, how you doing? The stress went down and her blood sugar came normal, even without any drugs at all. No medications at all. The elephant in the middle of the room.
That's interesting. Joe, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about, elephant in the room. I don't see any around here, but
that's a good one. I love that.
Okay, stress, yeah.
So don't discount stress. So look at your stress, find out where your stressors are. You've got to relieve that stress, because cortisol makes you resistant to insulin. And you can be injecting insulin, all kinds of insulin, but if you have a high cortisol, you're going to be blocking all of that insulin, and it's not going to be worthwhile. So one reason why your blood sugar might not be coming down in spite of your awesome diet and exercise program is having a lot of stress.
Yeah. So everyone watching right now, let's take a minute. Let's think about, if you had a blank sheet of paper and you have 60 seconds right now to think about it, what in your life is causing you stress? What do you think about? Maybe too much. What's going on, and that's giving you some anxiety, or what's making you feel like losing sleep, or
the corona.
Yeah.
Everybody I talk to in my office, I ask them, okay, so what are your stressors? And almost everybody comes up with something having to do with COVID-19. Being isolated. I can't go see my grandchildren because I didn't get vaccinated. All of these issues that have come up because of this pandemic has been very stressful on people. Isolation is stressful.
I think that's why it's so important, like for me, to get out in nature and like completely unplug from social media, the news. Like there is so much just bad news all the time. We're being bombarded with it, and how could that not stress you out if you're constantly being told that? So find, where is your happy place? For me, it's our cabin in the Black Hills. It's in the middle of the forest with zero internet connection pretty much and no TV, and you can just walk outside and completely feel like you're like just away from society, but you connect with God and the earth, and like that's so important. So yeah.
Well, see, that's where you feel for me. It's when I was walking through New York City with my daughter, and we were going to a restaurant, and then we went to a play on Broadway, and for me, I love the city, and it just I don't know, I like it. I like the see, I kind of live out in the middle of nowhere, and I like going into the city, and that's a respite for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I can feel that way as well. Yeah, I mean, it's really just disconnecting from like whatever your regular routine is, where you're, where you're being bombarded with those things. So
I just read something yesterday that someone had posted about how we often associate peace with quiet, and that's not true for everybody. And so something to think about.
Yeah.
Oh,
interesting.
Some people like the noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, hey, share in the chat. What did you come up with? What stresses you out? Would love to see your comments there, and share. Like, we're a community. That's another thing that helps with stress, is being part of a community.
That's huge. That's really big.
Yeah.
Having your people, having a community, family, church, even your work, whatever your community is, that's big. People that care about you, that's big.
Yeah. And, if you like, we have a community right here every Thursday, and then also a Facebook group on our, on Facebook. It's, I think Barton Webinar is the name of it, but we have people in there that, we can help each other and answer questions and just discuss different things we're going through. But yeah, where's your community? Where's your people? And that's so important. Well, are we at that time where we should start getting to some questions here and continue, like, ask your questions, put that in the Q&A in Zoom here. Or if you're watching on Facebook, put it in there. Also, just housekeeping, if you are watching this recording on YouTube, you can join us live by going to fixbloodsugar.com and registering to join us Thursdays at 11 a.m. Central Time. So we'd love to have you there as well. But we're doing this live, so let's get some questions going here. Put it in the Q&A, and put in that chat. What are the things that stress you out, and where is your happy place? So I want to hear that, and I'll share some of that later in the middle of our Q&A section. So Leslie, what do we got?
All right. Okay. Making sure. All right. Megan's wondering how much fat should be in this diet per day, and how much protein, and what types of fats do you prefer? Do you add oils or just the natural fats found in food?
Okay. Oh, that's a great question. So ideally, don't add any extra oils. Okay, there's only 3 things you need to avoid when you have type 2, because you're toxic, right? Type 2 diabetes is just a toxicity. That's all it is. And what are you toxic on? Well, it's calories. So there's only 3 things you need to avoid when you have type 2: carbohydrates and fats and proteins. Everything else is okay. So if you avoid those 3 things, which means you're not going to add extra fat. So whatever fat is in the foods, that's fine. That's what's there. So if you're eating some meat, there's just as much fat and cholesterol and whatever in a salmon steak as there is in a beef steak. As ounce for ounce, it's about the same. So it's nice about the salmon. It has the omega-3, which can lower inflammation, which can lower your blood sugar. So there's benefits there. But as far as just the calorie part goes, it's about the same. So decreasing the number of calories total is a great idea. So if you're adding a lot of the free foods in there, a lot of the broccoli and spinach, you know what? broccoli has a lot of protein in it. It's pretty high in protein. Cauliflower has a lot of protein in it. Most of the cruciferous vegetables do, but everything else does too. Fruits and avocados have a lot of fat in them. So if you're just getting the fat that's in the food, you don't have to count the fat. But if you want to count something else, count fiber. So get about 40 grams of fiber a day. And you'll find if you're eating 40 grams of fiber a day, it's really hard to add in a lot of other like calories. And you'll get plenty of food, because 40 grams of fiber is a lot of food. There's only like 4 grams in a large apple. That's like eating 10 apples a day. But of course, there's too many carbs there, so you wouldn't do that on phase 1. But fiber is a great, if you looked at a salad, you have a plate full of salad, that's about 4 grams of fiber. It's really not a lot of fiber. So you'd have to have 10 plates of salad a day. So it's a lot of food if you're getting 40 grams of fiber a day. And then you won't get too much fat or too much protein or too many carbs.
Today's Fixed Blood Sugar webinar is sponsored by Synachroma, our best-selling advanced blood sugar support formula. Now, thousands of people around the world are taking Synachroma every day as part of their program to fix their blood sugar using natural ingredients that simply work. Now, Dr. Saunders formulated Synachroma to meet key nutritional deficiencies that most people have unknowingly suffered from for far too long. With Synachroma, you get a blend of 6 key ingredients. The perfect combination of chromium, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2, which it's important to take those 2 together, selenium, vanadium, and our 10-to-1 cinnamon bark extract. Now, if you're not already using Synachroma, I highly recommend that you give it a try and see how it helps your energy, your weight, and your blood sugar numbers. You can get Synachroma at bartonnutrition.com or on Amazon. If you get it at bartonnutrition.com, you can enter the coupon code webinar25 and you'll save 25% off at bartonnutrition.com. But I realize some people like to go to Amazon as well. So anyways, Synachroma, highly recommend. Now let's get you back to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar.
All right. Let's see. Coney says, please tell me what causes stones in bladder and kidneys. Also, what can I do for my fingers as they hurt but are numb? Thank you.
Okay, 2 really important questions. Number 1, stones. Stones are caused the majority of the time, like 80% of the time, they're caused by calcium oxalate. The calcium comes from, like everything in our food has calcium. You can't avoid calcium. And then oxalate is oxalic acid, which we make some of and we eat a lot of. And so things that are like green vegetables have oxalates in them. And a lot of fruits and vegetables have this oxalic acid. And so the body doesn't need it. So it gets excreted in the urine. And while it's in the urine, it goes, oh, calcium. And it holds on to the calcium. And then another calcium, oh, another one. And then this calcium oxalate starts binding together and then starts forming a stone. Just like if you've ever done like crystal growing, like rock, glowing the rock, growing rocks, where you put the string in the sugar solution, and as the sugar, as the water evaporates, the sugar gets more concentrated, starts forming the little rocks on there. You're growing the crystals on there. That's what's happening in your kidneys and bladder. So the reason that happens is for 2 reasons. 1, too much oxalates, and number 2, too much calcium, and the pH is not that good. So how do you fix that problem? Well, if people have a tendency to get these stones, find out what's wrong, find out why, because you might have like a parathyroid problem where you're putting out too much parathyroid hormone that's causing you to actually take calcium out of your bones and excreting it in the kidneys where it can start forming stones. So look at why, because if you don't know why and you're just trying this and trying that, then that's not a good way to do it. Now, if you've done a whole bunch of tests and well, all the tests are normal. My parathyroid is normal. My calcium is normal. My vitamin D is normal. Then add one thing that's vitamin K. You can add vitamin K, and then also add magnesium. The magnesium will bind to the oxalates and prevent calcium from binding the oxalates, and it won't form stones. So the magnesium can prevent you from getting stones. Now, the second part of that question was the fingertips are hurting and numb. That's not a good sign. There's a couple of problems that could be caused by that, but that's a neuropathy. Unless it's just like two fingers, then it could be a pinched nerve in your neck. If it's like just these two fingers or just these three fingers, then it could be a pinched nerve in your neck. So you got to look at, or sometimes a nerve in your arm or something. So you got to look at, make sure it's not a nerve. You may need to see a neurologist and get that evaluated. But if it's a general neuropathy, like all 5 fingers on both hands, you got 10 fingers, then that's a systemic problem. And that can come from type 2 diabetes can do it. And that's why we have the Nervala, to help that kind of thing, to improve circulation. And the other thing is something called Raynaud's phenomenon. Raynaud's phenomenon is where the blood vessels constrict from the autonomic nervous system. And that's an entirely different problem and is not specifically related to diabetes, but is related to inflammation, which it could also be related to diabetes. So finding out if you have high inflammation, you have Raynaud's phenomenon, the neurologist can help you with that to distinguish what's going on so that you know what to do about it, because they all have different treatments.
All right. Very good. Okay. Someone is asking, how much fish oil should one person take?
So it depends. Okay. Fish oil. Fish oil is wonderful. And why are people selling so much fish oil? Well, it's because we eat so much vegetable oil. So vegetable oil has omega-6 fatty acids and fish oil has omega-3 fatty acid, and there needs to be a balance in the body. If they're not balanced, if you have too much omega-6, you're going to make more inflammation, and that's going to cause all the hot, red, swollen, tender pain, joint pains, arthritis, all that kind of stuff. That's too much omega-6 from vegetable oils. And then if you have too much omega-3, then you suppress your immune system. And actually, there's some association with cancer. There may be some, there was a study on skin cancer that people with really high omega-3 oils to omega-6 ratio were more likely to get cancer. So it's not all about, more is better. It's balance. So if you're eating only like grass-fed beef and chicken and omega-3 eggs and you're eating vegetables. Most of the vegetables, the green vegetables that we eat, are actually omega-3 heavy, like the cattle that are fed on grass or grass-fed beef has about a 6-to-1 ratio omega-3 to omega-6. So it's a lot of omega-3. So grass-fed beef is actually a good source of omega-3, like fish. Whereas if you get fish that are farmed and they're fed corn, if they're throwing corn in to feed the fish, guess what the fish are going to have? Omega-6 and not omega-3. So then you're going backwards, right? Your fish oil is not any good. It's going backwards. So what you need is balance. So you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I balance this? This is crazy. No, it's not that hard. Eat fresh stuff. Eat organic, grass-fed. Eat stuff that's real food, like that comes out of a garden. That kind of stuff would be awesome. And if you do that, you will get a good omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. and you won't need to take extra fish oil. So then that begs the question, how much fish oil should you take? Well, if you're already kind of in this situation, around 1 gram a day. So the one pill, most of them are about 1 gram, 1,000 milligrams. And that seems to be about right. That's I test people for their omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. And people that are taking about 1 gram a day, they're usually about right.
All right, we have a question on Facebook, and we kind of touched on this, but Eileen says, why is my blood sugar perpetually high in the morning? It's usually more than 180 by 9 to 10 in the morning.
Okay, the real reason that happens is in the morning, somewhere between 6 and 8, you release your cortisol. And the cortisol makes, of course, insulin resistant. That allows your blood sugar to go up so that there's plenty of sugar for your brain to start working and your heart to start working and you to get going for the day, right? And it's all set up that way. It's a beautiful system. The only problem is that when we have too much, then our system gets overloaded. So the reason it's higher in the morning is partly because that cortisol response, it's called the awakening response, causes you to be more insulin resistant and causes your glucagon to put out extra sugar. So you got this extra sugar being made and more insulin resistance in the morning. Whereas in the evening, your cortisol should be really low, and that brings it down. But sometimes blood sugar is higher in the evening for other reasons, and that's because you've been eating all day. So that would be a different thing.
Okay. Kathy says, hi from Montana. You are my bright spot of the week, my
Aww,
encouragement.
That's
in
sweet.
the process of being diagnosed with MS. It seems the same diet for type 2 and fasting is also good for MS. Any ideas? I really don't want to go on meds. I'm discouraged because I was working so hard at getting my diabetes in check, and now I have another battle. Thanks for being there for us.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, you do. But the bright spot there is MS is reversible, and there's a lot of information out now. In fact, there's a doctor. Get this book, Dr. Terry Wahls, Wahls. Dr. Terry Wahls, she had MS and like really bad, like in a wheelchair. And she was really active otherwise. She was a black belt in karate and all that. And then she ended up in a wheelchair and just motoring around in her motorized wheelchair. And then she went on this program and she completely reversed it. And I saw her speak once. After, of course, this happened. And so she wrote a book on how to reverse MS. First of all, it's called the Wahls Protocol, Wahls. There's videos also. She put out some videos. One is called Minding Your Mitochondria. Anyway, that's a good place to start because that is a great program, and that will also help reverse your diabetes as well. It's a great program.
Okay, question from Eric. How can I measure insulin?
You have to go to a lab, and it depends on which state you're in. Some states you can walk into a lab and say, I want an insulin level. And they'll go, okay, put your arm out, give us some blood. Other states you walk in and they'll say, no, you have to have a doctor order it or we won't do it. So it depends on what state you're in as to whether you have to have a doctor order it for you or not. But if you can find a doctor that'll do it, that'd be great. But if you're in a state where you can just walk in and order it, that'd be fine too. And you just ask for an insulin level. There's nothing special about it, just insulin.
All right. Question, if your urine smells like ammonia, does it mean you're having kidney problems? It doesn't happen all the time, but I'm concerned when I do and wondering why.
Ammonia. I wonder if you're on phase 1 of the program because ammonia is what urea is made into made into ammonia when at a certain pH, at a more basic pH. And usually it means there's a lot of protein. You're processing a whole lot of protein. So if you're on a really high protein diet, you'll probably get more of an ammonia smell in your urine than if you're on a low protein diet. So it may have more to do with the protein, because that's how proteins are processed, and that's why we have the ammonia and urea in our urine anyway.
Okay, Victor is asking, I just started the program and I have 5 of your supplements. Should I take them at the same time, or are there ones that should be taken together?
No, it doesn't matter. You can take them. I'm trying to think. Okay, turmeric's okay. You probably have synochroma with nervala, turmeric, and even if you have the magnesium spray, the iodine, there is nothing that we have in our small armamentarium that you can't take together or that you should take together. All of them can be taken with food. We don't have any amino acids. Amino acids you generally take without food because they compete for absorption. And then certain minerals, but we don't have those in there, like copper and zinc. So yeah, so you can take them all together. That's fine. Take them with food. They're well absorbed that way.
Okay. Eric is wondering, how do we measure cortisol?
That's a great question. Okay, so there's a problem with measuring cortisol, and that is you get an instant in time. Your cortisol is like fluctuating from 20 to practically 0.5 or something like that throughout the day. There's these it's called a diurnal variation. So when you test is really important. So how to test? Most doctors can order a blood test, and that would be, just at that moment in time. And usually they'll want an AM cortisol, which is around 8 o'clock in the morning, because that's when it peaks. And that's when you can say, okay, this is my peak cortisol for the day. As a rule, but that's not always the case. I had somebody just the other day where we measured a saliva cortisol 5 times throughout the day. And his morning cortisol was low and his evening cortisol was high. He was reversed. And that's why he couldn't sleep at night. And that's why his blood sugar was going up at night, because that's when he's getting insulin resistant, was at night after he's been eating all day. And I think that's the best way is you can do a saliva cortisol and you do it like 5 times. There's another one 7 times throughout the day. To get your circadian rhythm, what your cortisol looks like throughout the day. And that'll give you a much better idea of how your cortisol is. But remember, it changes from day to day, depending on your stressors, depending on what you eat, depending on coffee drinking, alcohol. All of those things affect your adrenal glands and will change that somewhat.
Meg, we touched on this as well, but how do we manage the diabetes solution kit as a diet, or as a vegan? How do you manage the diet?
Oh, okay. The key is free foods. All of that free stuff is essentially a vegan ketogenic diet. So if you're vegan, you don't have to have all the meat and eggs and stuff that's in there. Instead of that, just look at, you can have all the free foods you want. So you can have the avocado and the broccoli and cauliflower and all the lettuce and chop the vegetables in there, cucumbers and all of that. A vegan ketogenic diet there, I went online and looked them up, and there were some pretty good ones online if you wanted to look at that too. But it's pretty easy on phase 1 to just look at the free foods and do that. The vegan free foods.
William here is a vegetarian, takes flaxseed, no fish oil. How does that play into the omega-3 versus the omega-6 ratio?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Flaxseed is really high in omega-3. It's linseed. Flaxseed is linseed. And so have you ever heard of linoleum? Linoleum is made out of linseed oil. That's flaxseed oil. And also your oil paints that they paint with, they use linseed, and that's flaxseed. Anyway, so how does that play in instead of fish oil? Well, the linseed oil or the flaxseed oil has arachidonic acid, which is an omega-3 oil, which can be made into the DHA in your body. So you're still getting the omega-3s from the flaxseed oil, and that's just fine. So here's what I would do in that kind of a case. Trade around your oils. So for example, walnuts are really good with an omega-3 oil. And then flax seeds. And if you use different oils, then your body actually can use those in different ways, different omega-3 oil supplements. So yeah, you can do that. It's still the same thing. You still have about a gram a day.
Gloria says, my grandson has type 1 diabetes. How can his mother help him to not have too much insulin?
That's great. Great. Okay. So we often talk about, okay, remember this is for type 2 and not for type 1. But if you have type 1 and you're on the program, the diabetes solution kit, the solution here is not that you won't have diabetes, because dang it, if you're insulin deficient, if your pancreas is not making insulin, you just got to have insulin, because you can't get the sugar or even the proteins into the cells unless you have insulin. So the insulin is essential, but like that question is such a good question, because what you want is the minimum amount of insulin that you can take. So exercise is very important. As you exercise, you open up the cells and allow sugar into the cells without even needing insulin. So exercise is very important. So don't let them lay around and do nothing at all. Movement is really important here. And then another thing is to have prevent insulin resistance. And the best way to do that is with a low fat and a relatively low protein diet. So again, we just talked about the vegan ketogenic diet. That's an excellent way to go. In fact, there's a whole book out about it called Mastering Diabetes. And it's written by two people who both have type 1 diabetes. And it's a pretty thick book. It's got a lot of information on how to handle that.
Okay, Connie said, you had asked me early on where I carry most of my weight, and I said all over. You then told me that my body is having trouble processing protein. What do I take to correct that? Also, what would make your leg muscles really feel fatigued, weak, and feel like they feel unstable sometimes to walk?
Okay. So that several questions involved here. How to deal with the excess protein? Well, it really is just not to get excess protein. So if you're eating, around 40 grams of protein a day, that's a reasonable amount of protein. If you're eating 100 grams of protein a day, on the ketogenic diet, that's going to be too much. So getting the amount of protein between like around 20 to 40 would be really good. So then the second part of the question is how or why do my muscles feel weak and tired? A lot of times that's because they aren't using sugar or protein efficient, or sugar or fat efficiently. It's interesting that we talk a lot about sugar and we kind of leave the fat to the side because we carry extra fat on us and we go, we're not using it. And yeah, that's in certain tissues, but all over the body, we use 2/3 of all the energy we burn is fat and 1/3 is sugar. So it's just because, the brain has to have a constant supply of sugar and the heart has to have a constant supply of sugar. So we talk about the sugar as because the blood sugar is going up and all that, but we don't think about that our muscles need fat too, and then most of our energy in our body actually comes from fat. So there's something called L-carnitine, C-A-R-N-I-T-I-N-E. L-carnitine is a transporter. It transports the fat into the mitochondria so it can be used for energy. And a lot of people are deficient in L-carnitine, especially in dietary deficiencies. If you're not eating a lot of vegetables in your diet, then it's common to get, not common, but it happens. So if you're getting a lot of fatigue, try adding that in to see if you can't get more efficient at using fat for energy.
Okay, let's see. 2 questions here. I know you're going to need to leave soon. So online, someone said, okay, you told me what to do about lowering, or you answered my question about having high blood sugar in the morning, but what do I actually need to do to bring it down? So let's maybe quick chat about the diabetes solution kit. And then also there was another thing that related to that. Do you have tips for managing carb cravings?
Okay. So the first part is, okay, what do I do about that morning blood sugar? Okay, remember I just told the story of Julie that had so much stress because she and her daughter were fighting so much, and the daughter moved out and her blood sugar went down. Okay, so that morning cortisol, that extra stress hormone that you're making in the morning is going to make your blood sugar high no matter what you do. So get stressed down, don't drink coffee, but basically being on the diabetes solution kit and getting your general overall blood sugar down to normal, which may include exercise. If you can exercise in the morning, open up your muscles and allow your muscles to start using some carbohydrates, it'll bring the blood sugar down nicely. So exercise, lower stress, avoid stimulants like coffee and sugar in the morning, and to keep that more balanced. And then the second question was, what was it again?
How to manage those carb cravings.
Carb cravings, yeah. Okay. You know what?
You find something new to do. No, I'm just kidding.
So putting it off and saying, I'll have something later. Oh yeah, boy, I'd really like a piece of cake right now, but I'll eat it later. That kind of thing works pretty well. Sometimes it's just like, I gotta have something. And I have almonds in the cupboard and I just eat some almonds. And the other thing I generally have around are those baby carrots. So when I have carbon cravings, I eat some almonds or some of those baby carrots, just so that I can have something to crunch on and is kind of sweet and kind of satisfies. But a lot of times it's just a matter of putting it off and saying, I'll wait a few minutes, and that works pretty well.
I've heard also that salt, if you just put a pinch of salt in your mouth, that will help diminish that.
Oh, that's a good thought. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
I'd have to try that.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Okay, let's see. I'm going to find one more question, or if there's one more question that you see, Joe, that you'd like to have answered, because we know Dr. Saunders needs to go back to his patients.
Sure. I didn't see any that weren't answered. Let me look in the Q&A quick, but
There are, you guys, we've had a lot of good questions today.
I think just Dr. Saunders doing a final wrap up here, or his last minute, kind of recapping what we talked about.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay. So what we started off with was, why doesn't my blood sugar go down? And we talked about insulin levels or insulin resistance and how to become more sensitive to your insulin. And we talked about using synochroma, making sure you have the right nutrients, and then avoiding high fat, which causes insulin resistance, and high protein that causes insulin resistance. So those are things that you can do. And then exercising increases your insulin sensitivity and brings down insulin resistance so that your blood sugar can come down. So those are things we talked about. And then we talked about stress and how important stress is, and you got to get stressed down. or else the program doesn't work if you're really stressed. So overall, think of it in terms of what's going on in your cells, that there's just too much. And so you want to clean house, you want to detox and cleanse and get all the excess out. And the way you get the excess out is, number one, don't put any new stuff in. And then number two, start using it up. So avoid carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and then exercise. And I think, that is the way to work. So, okay. So to the patient that I told you about at the beginning, where, she's fasting and her blood sugar is constantly over 150. And so we did some tests and found out she had autoimmune diabetes, where she has antibodies against insulin. So that she has no effective insulin because the antibodies bind to the insulin. And so that's why her blood sugar is consistently elevated. So now we have her on an autoimmune diet. And that was her reason for the blood sugar not coming down, even when she was fasting.
Today's Fixed Blood Sugar webinar is sponsored by Synachroma, our best-selling advanced blood sugar support formula. Now, thousands of people around the world are taking Synachroma every day as part of their program to fix their blood sugar using natural ingredients that simply work. Now, Dr. Saunders formulated Synachroma to meet key nutritional deficiencies that most people have unknowingly suffered from for far too long. With Synachroma, you get a blend of 6 key ingredients: the perfect combination of chromium, vitamin D3, and vitamin K2, which it's important to take those two together, selenium, vanadium, and our 10-to-1 cinnamon bark extract. Now, if you're not already using Synachroma, I highly recommend that you give it a try and see how it helps your energy, your weight, and your blood sugar numbers. You can get Synachroma at bartonnutrition.com or on Amazon. If you get it at bartonnutrition.com, you can enter the coupon code webinar25 and you'll save 25% off at bartonnutrition.com. But I realize some people like to go to Amazon as well. So anyways, Synachroma, highly recommend. Now let's get you back to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. Awesome. Great stuff. Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Saunders. Appreciate you. Have a good time back with the patients, and we'll see you next week.
Okay,
next
week.
Hey.
All right. And Leslie, we can stay on for another minute here just to kind of recap. Bob Lewis asked a question about the diabetes detox that we sent an email about. So actually that is the same program. We call it something different in that email. It is still the diabetes solution kit. It is a detox program in a sense. And so, it's the same thing, but it's also a different way to think about it. And I like how, it's phrased, it's talked about as a detox program. And Dr. Saunders just mentioned it, like really getting rid of all the excess stuff. And he's used the kitchen sink analogy and things like that. So, let's see, a lot of other good questions that have come in that we just didn't get time to take today. So Krish, we saw your question, but didn't get to that. Sorry about that. And others. And so just a reminder that we do have a YouTube channel with over 100 of these webinars recorded. And so play that in the background as you go about your day, and you'll continue to learn new things that will help you on your journey. And really that's what Barton Publishing and Barton Nutrition is all about. It's our core values is to, one of our second core value is to help people and to help people more. And so that's why we do these webinars. We want to give you the tools and resources that you need to answer your questions and encourage you and show you that other people have done what you're trying to do, and for you to keep up the good work as well. So follow this plan, the diabetes solution kit. There's a lot of good stuff in there. In the beginning of this, we talk about identifying your reason why. And that is really important. And it's related to the elephant in the room. Like, first of all, why do you want to get rid of diabetes and put diabetes in remission, as we like to say? But also, just like I said, not a lot of people replied to this or shared this, but like, what is the elephant in your room? What is it that's causing stress in your life that's making you maybe not make the best choices? And so whether that's through eating or feeling stress, what is it? And how's your relationship with God? Like, do you have one? First of all, are you connected to your creator? That is a huge part of wholeness and health, and really having true health is having that relationship with him. So just, if I can encourage you with anything today, if you're struggling on why your blood sugars aren't coming down, get away from distractions. Just take a good old fashioned piece of paper and a pen or pencil and just sit quietly and think and pray, and God will show you. He'll talk to you. So just got to be listen and open to his voice speaking to you. That's what I believe. It's worked for myself, for others on our team, and many other people. So that's it. And so hope that's helpful for you. Leslie, anything else?
I don't think so, guys. There were a lot of questions we didn't get to. And Chris, your question, I don't think it's controversial at all. That'd be a good question to ask. In fact, are you able to email me that question? That would be great, so that we can ask Dr. Saunders that. And man, we're gonna have to start. Oh, Gus, we're not able to even get through all of our questions anymore. So we might have to cut Dr. Saunders' teaching time down. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But now we have an elephant and a dog in the picture.
Yeah, we need Gus. Gus, I just realized he wants to go outside, but he stinks, so he gets to take a BATH, which he does not like. Yeah. I'll show you what happens if I tell Gus, "Hey, Gus, you want to take a bath?" He's like, no. Gus, want to go take a bath?
Joe and I have the same type of dog. They're both mini golden doodles.
Yeah.
And my dog thinks it's a farm dog. And so it has to take lots of, actually, I shower my dog.
Yeah, I need to go give Gus, he stinks pretty bad. So, okay, everyone, that's my signal to get out of here. So we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yes.